Carter grew up in a town where the mountains seemed to scrape the sky, and the winters could freeze a person's breath midair. Montana's sprawling plains and pine forests offered freedom to those willing to brave it. But for freedom came not in the landscape, but in the challenge of proving herself. From a young age, she had been fascinated with precision, her father's old rifles, the way a hawk could lock its eyes on a target from hundreds of feet above, the meticulousness in the mechanics of a perfect shot. He had been a sniper in the army, serving tour overseas, and though he had returned home by war, he carried a quiet dignity and a precision in life that admired endlessly. Her father's death had left a hollow in the family's life, but it also ignited something inside her, a desire to carry on his legacy, to test herself in ways that others deemed impossible for a girl. Would spend hours in the backyard, her little .22 rifle aimed at tin cans or painted targets, studying wind direction, breath control, and the subtle twitch of the muscles in her arms. Her mother would call from the kitchen window, worried, while adjusted her stance and aimed again, whispering to herself the words her father once told her. Steady breath, steady aim. The rest is patience. At school was never the tallest nor the loudest, but she had a quiet confidence that sometimes bordered on defiance. Boys in her classes, some of whom had known her since childhood, began whispering that she was foolish, that girls didn't belong in fields like marksmanship or the military. Why don't you stick to cheerleading or something? One of the popular boys sneered during her sophomore year, smirking as she reloaded her target pistol in the school gym. Didn't reply. Instead, she let her results do the talking. Her target scores were unmatched, and her calm, precise hands became a topic of reluctant admiration. But admiration never softened the ridicule, it only fueled it. It wasn't just the boys. Even adults in the town, well-meaning yet steeped in traditional thinking, questioned her ambitions. A local shop owner, when she bought her first proper rifle, shook his head and muttered, "Don't get your hopes up, girl. You'll never make it out there with the boys." Smiled politely, but inside her determination hardened. Every dismissive glance, every whispered doubt became a brick in the foundation of her resolve. Her escape, when it became necessary, was the forest. Before sunrise, she would trek through frost-laden pines, carrying her rifle and notebook, mapping distances, studying animal tracks, and practicing her aim. The cold bit at her cheeks and fingers, but she welcomed it. Pain was proof that she was alive, proof that she was pushing boundaries. She learned to move silently, to read the environment, to predict movement skills that would later form the core of her sniper instincts. Her solitude in the forest was her training ground, her sanctuary, and her proving ground. By the time reached high school, her reputation as a precise shooter had started to spread beyond the immediate circle of doubters. At a regional shooting competition, she was one of the youngest participants and certainly the only girl. Whispers filled the air. She doesn't belong here. Why's she even trying? Yet when she stepped up to the line, adjusted her sights, and let her first shot fly, the crowd fell silent. The bullet struck the center of the target with uncanny precision. Shot after shot's performance was flawless. Judges shook their heads in disbelief. The other competitors were speechless. For the first time, she saw admiration in the eyes of strangers, a recognition earned through skill, not gender. But it wasn't enough to simply excel. Needed to test herself against harder challenges, ones that went beyond static targets. She joined the school's ROTC program despite the whispers and sideways glances. The male cadets, confident in their superiority, tried to intimidate her. "You're going to quit on the first run," one sneered during a timed obstacle course. Only tightened her grip, focused her breathing, and ran faster than she ever had. By the end of the session, she had not only finished but had set a new record. The boy who had mocked her walked away in stunned silence, muttering excuses to cover his own embarrassment. Skill in marksmanship and her relentless discipline didn't go unnoticed. One day, during a particularly grueling shooting drill, her instructor, a retired Army officer, approached her. He had watched her for weeks, impressed yet cautious. "You've got talent," he said, "but talent alone won't get you through the real test. Out there, it's not just skill, it's nerves, endurance, and strategy. Are you ready for that?" Jaw tightened. She nodded. "I'm ready," she replied, her voice steady, betraying none of the nervous excitement roiling inside. Even at home, her mother worried about the risks was taking. "You need to think about what's realistic, honey," she would say, her voice trembling with concern. "You're going to face people who don't want to see you succeed. Are you sure you want to put yourself through that?" Would only smile, touching the old dog tags her father had left behind. "I don't want what's easy, Mom. I want what's worth it." By the time graduated high school, she had developed a reputation not just as a skilled shooter, but as someone with extraordinary mental toughness. Teachers, peers, and even some townsfolk who had once doubted her began to speak of her in hushed tones. "That girl, she's unstoppable." Yet the battles ahead, the ones that would define her as Iron Wolf, were still on the horizon. Boot camp, SEAL training, and real missions lay far beyond Montana's forests, in places where skill alone could not guarantee survival. Still was ready. Every laugh, every doubt, every whispered remark that she had endured became fuel for the fire burning in her chest. When she finally packed her bags and left for Navy training, she wasn't just carrying clothes and gear. She was carrying every lesson, every target struck, every fear overcome. The girl who had been underestimated and dismissed was stepping into a world where only the strong, disciplined, and relentless survived. And Carter intended not just to survive, she intended to excel. As she drove away from the mountains, the wind biting at her face and the sky streaked with dawn light, she whispered to herself, echoing her father's words, "Steady breath, steady aim." The world didn't believe in her yet, but that didn't matter. Soon the world would know her name. The Navy's training base rose starkly against the Pacific horizon, a world of endless gray surf, jagged cliffs, and concrete buildings designed to test every ounce of a candidate's strength. Carter arrived with a duffel bag in one hand and her father's dog tags clutched tightly in the other. The smell of salt and diesel, the cries of drill instructors, and the unyielding roar of the waves made her stomach tighten. She wasn't afraid, not exactly, but she knew instinctively that this was a battlefield unlike any she had faced before. This was where boys were broken and warriors were forged. From the first step onto the training grounds felt the weight of eyes on her. The male recruits, some grinning, some sneering, whispered among themselves. "She won't last a week," one said. "Watch her trip over her own feet." Didn't reply. She adjusted the strap of her pack, squared her shoulders, and walked forward. Every whisper, every doubt became fuel. Her mind focused, her heart steady. She was no longer a girl from Montana. She was a soldier in training. The first week was hell. The instructors were relentless, shouting orders that blurred into a constant roar. The recruits were pushed to their limits in every way. Endless runs along the beach with packs heavier than their own bodies. Freezing surf exercises designed to strip away every ounce of comfort. And obstacle courses that demanded agility, endurance, and strategy. Fell more times than she could count, her hands blistered and bleeding, her muscles screaming, yet she rose again, each time meeting the instructor's gaze with unflinching determination. One afternoon, as they slogged through waist-deep surf with packs that felt like boulders, a wave knocked off her feet. She inhaled a mouthful of salt water, her vision blurred, her body numb. Nearby, a recruit cursed and sank into the surf, terrified of failing. Didn't hesitate. She dragged herself through the waves, helped a struggling teammate to his feet, and pressed on. When they finally reached the shore, gasping, shivering, Commander Ray, a man whose reputation as a harsh yet fair SEAL trainer preceded him, watched with a calculating eye. For the first time, he wasn't skeptical. He was intrigued. Over the weeks, resilience began to earn grudging respect. She moved faster than expected, recovered from injuries that would have sidelined others, and displayed a focus under pressure that rivaled the best candidates. But not everyone admired her. Some recruits openly mocked her, questioning her right to even be there. One particularly aggressive cadet tried to trip her during a night navigation drill. Anticipating the move, pivoted smoothly and pressed forward, finishing the exercise first. A few of the men muttered apologies under their breaths. Others merely scowled, their pride bruised. Night drills became her proving ground. While others struggled to stay awake, maintained her calm, guiding her small team of recruits through treacherous terrain under darkness and rain. Her ability to calculate distance, read the wind, and maintain stealth under extreme pressure earned her the nickname Iron Wolf, first whispered in disbelief, then repeated in awe. Even who had watched her with skepticism could not deny that she possessed something rare, the combination of unshakable focus, courage, and strategic thinking. Yet the physical challenges continued to escalate. During the infamous log carry exercise, teams were forced to transport a massive wooden log over a kilometer of uneven sand while maintaining formation. Her arms burned, her shoulders screamed, but she refused to falter. When a teammate stumbled, she steadied him, ensuring the team stayed intact. The men around her, who had once dismissed her as a weak link, now glanced at her with grudging respect. She was no longer simply surviving, she was leading, without ever being asked to. Beyond the physical, mental challenges proved just as grueling. Candidates faced constant psychological pressure, sleep deprivation, harsh insults, and tasks designed to test emotional endurance. Often found herself alone in the dark, the ocean's waves crashing like distant thunder, wondering if she truly belonged. But every time doubt crept in, she remembered her father's voice. Pain fades, focus stays. Her eyes would close briefly, her breathing would slow, and then she would rise, more determined than before. By the end of the second month, consistency began to disrupt the social dynamics among recruits. Some male candidates, initially dismissive, could no longer ignore her skill. Others became openly hostile, threatened by the quiet authority she commanded through action rather than words. Observed silently, noting not just her physical prowess, but her resilience under adversity, the hallmark of a true SEAL. The tipping point came during the infiltration exercise, a night-long mission designed to simulate real combat scenarios. Recruits were tasked with moving stealthily across rugged terrain, avoiding detection and neutralizing targets. Led her small team with precision, coordinating their movements, whispering instructions, and anticipating enemy patterns. At one point, a teammate panicked under the simulated gunfire. Without hesitation, guided him silently through the darkness, neutralizing his fear and ensuring the mission's success. When they emerged at the extraction point hours later, stepped forward and finally spoke. "You've got skill, but skill isn't enough out there. Your heart, your focus, that's what will make you survive. Keep it." His lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. For the first time, the man who had been skeptical of her potential acknowledged her capability. Yet she knew this was just the beginning. SEAL training was not about occasional victories. It was about consistency, discipline, and the ability to push beyond human limits day after day, week after week. By the time the first phase of training concluded, had transformed from the girl everyone doubted into a figure of quiet legend among recruits. She had endured relentless physical punishment, mental strain, and social hostility, and emerged not just intact but stronger. The whispers of Iron Wolf circulated more frequently, accompanied by awe and disbelief. Some still doubted, some still mocked, but a growing number of recruits recognized that she was not to be underestimated. Late one night, as she cleaned her rifle and stared out at the Pacific, reflected on how far she had come. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, a mirror of the challenges yet to come. She felt a mixture of exhaustion, exhilaration, and anticipation. Her father's dog tags glinted under the dim light of the bunk. She held them close and whispered softly, "I'm ready, Dad. I won't let them or myself down." And with that resolve, Carter stepped into the next stage of her transformation. She was no longer the girl from Montana. She was the Iron Wolf in the making, and the world, she knew, had yet to see what she could truly do. Hell weak. The name alone struck fear into the hearts of even the most seasoned SEAL candidates. It was 5 days of unrelenting physical punishment, sleep deprivation, and mental torture, designed to strip recruits of every ounce of comfort, pride, and endurance, leaving only those capable of surviving under extreme conditions. For Carter, this was the ultimate test, the crucible that would determine whether she belonged in the ranks of America's elite warriors. From the first hour, Hell Week lived up to its fearsome reputation. The recruits were driven into freezing ocean surf before dawn, stripped of every ounce of dignity, and ordered to swim, run, and crawl across rocky terrain without pause. His body screamed in protest. Her shoulders burned, her legs quivered with exhaustion, and her hands were raw from repeated friction against sand, rocks, and wet rope. Yet she moved forward, focusing on one step, one breath, one movement at a time. Each step was a battle against fatigue, each breath a defiance of pain. The instructors were merciless. Shouts pierced the fog of exhaustion, demanding obedience, precision, and discipline. Mistakes were punished immediately, a dropped log, a stumble, a hesitation in response, each met with hours of grueling exercises or brutal punishments in the freezing surf. Fell countless times, swallowed by waves and mud, but she refused to quit. The whispers of doubt in her mind, maybe you're not strong enough, were drowned out by her father's steady voice echoing in her memory. Pain fades. Focus stays. Other recruits began to falter under the unrelenting pace. Some collapsed into the surf, crying or shaking uncontrollably. Some abandoned their fellow teammates, too consumed by their own suffering. However, noticed those struggling around her and instinctively lent support. She dragged a panicking recruit to shore, offered quiet encouragement to a teammate trembling with exhaustion, and never once allowed herself to slow for comfort. This earned her wary glances from the men who had doubted her. For the first time, they saw not just a girl struggling to keep up, but a soldier refusing to yield under impossible conditions. Midway through Hell Week, a particularly grueling exercise tested the candidates' endurance to their absolute limits. They were ordered to carry a heavy log in a circle across the beach, up and down steep dunes, while instructors timed and monitored their every movement. Muscles quivered and burned, lungs screamed for air, and bodies threatened to collapse. Arms trembled, sweat and sand clinging to her skin, yet she remained steady. When a teammate faltered, she lifted him partially herself, whispering in a calm voice, "We finish this together." By the end of the exercise, she had not only endured but had become the anchor of her small unit, a force that others silently depended upon. Sleep deprivation became another enemy. For days, the candidates were allowed no more than an hour of rest, often interrupted by sudden drills or tasks. Mind fought against hallucinations and fatigue, her body begging for respite. Yet she found a rhythm in the chaos, a steady breath that reminded her she was in control. When others floundered in despair, remained the calm eye in the storm, quietly encouraging and leading without drawing attention to herself. It was here, in the heart of exhaustion, that the essence of the Iron Wolf began to take form. The instructors, led by Commander Ray, observed with a mixture of surprise and grudging respect. Once skeptical, noted her resilience and her instinctive leadership. He saw how she lifted others in moments of collapse, how she calculated movements in darkness with precision, and how she refused to succumb to the mental warfare that Hell Week inflicted. "She's not just surviving," he murmured to a fellow officer. "She's leading." Yet Hell Week also tested its internal limits. Doubt, fear, and grief surfaced in the quiet moments, memories of her father, the whispers of townsfolk who had dismissed her, the weight of expectation she placed on herself. One night, alone on the shore, she collapsed in the sand, shivering uncontrollably, the ocean roaring before her. She pressed her hands into the freezing grains and whispered to herself, "I can't stop. I won't stop. Not now, not ever." Slowly she rose, arms trembling, legs shaking, but her spirit unbroken. She continued the exercises with renewed determination, knowing that failure was not an option. By the final day of Hell Week, his physical body was near collapse. Her muscles burned with lactic acid, her lungs screamed for oxygen, and her mind swam in a fog of fatigue. Yet she completed the ultimate test, the long, grueling night march across rugged terrain carrying a fellow recruit whose strength had failed. The ocean wind cut into her skin, and the rocky cliffs threatened to unbalance her, but she pressed forward. One step at a time, one breath at a time, until she finally reached the extraction point. Observing silently, nodded once, a rare gesture of approval, indicating that she had not only survived but excelled under extreme pressure. Success during Hell Week did not go unnoticed among her peers. The men who had mocked or doubted her earlier now watched in quiet awe. She had endured what many of them could not, demonstrating an extraordinary blend of physical endurance, mental fortitude, and quiet leadership, yet did not bask in their admiration. She was aware that Hell Week was only the beginning. True tests lay ahead in sniper school, in live operations, in moments where split-second decisions could mean life or death. As she lay on the sand, gazing at the horizon where the gray ocean met the sky, felt a profound shift within herself. She was no longer simply a girl trying to prove herself. She was a soldier forged by fire, tested under the harshest conditions, and hardened by the relentless demands of Hell Week. The nickname Iron Wolf, whispered in awe by her peers, no longer felt like an external label. It was a reflection of her own understanding of who she had become, unyielding, precise, and relentless. When she finally returned to the barracks, exhausted, bruised, and covered in sand and salt, she received a quiet nod from. No words were spoken but understood. He had seen her heart. He had seen her resilience, and she knew that the real journey had only just begun. Hell Week had broken many, yet it had strengthened her. It had taken her to the edge of human endurance and forced her to confront every fear, every doubt, and every limitation. Emerging from it, Carter was no longer just a recruit. She was a soldier, ready to face the next trials, to prove herself in ways the world had yet to imagine. And deep within her, the fire of the Iron Wolf burned brighter than ever. Carter's first deployment as part of an elite SEAL unit took her far from the frozen beaches and rocky cliffs of training, into a world of sand, dust, and unending danger. The desert stretched endlessly beneath the relentless sun, and the wind carried whispers of conflict and tension. Operation Iron Dagger was a mission of strategic precision. Infiltrate a hostile village where enemy forces had taken position, neutralize threats, and provide intelligence and overwatch for the extraction team. Felt her pulse quicken. This was no simulation, no obstacle course, no drill. This was real. From the moment the team landed, tension hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. The terrain was harsh, littered with makeshift fortifications and narrow alleyways, each concealing potential threats. As the designated sniper in Overwatch set herself atop a ridge overlooking the village, her rifle was an extension of herself. Every scope adjustment, every breath, every heartbeat mattered. The men in her team moved below, relying on her eyes, her calm, and her precision to guide them safely. As the sun began to dip, casting long shadows across the desert-spotted movement, a hostile combatant attempting to flank the team's entry point. Her finger hovered above the trigger, eyes locked on the target. She breathed slowly, recalling her father's mantra, steady breath, steady aim. One shot, precise, calculated, fatal. The enemy fell and her team moved undetected past the danger. The SEALs below didn't even flinch. To them, it seemed as if the threat had vanished by some miracle. Knew it had been skill, focus, and instinct. Hours stretched into an uneasy night. Enemy snipers emerged from hidden positions, firing sporadically, attempting to pin down the SEALs. Eyes scanned constantly, every shadow, every twitch of movement analyzed with razor-sharp precision. Her training, her endless hours in Montana forests, her Hell Week endurance, it all culminated in this moment. Another enemy fell, another threat neutralized, and the SEALs advanced. Her team whispered her nickname, Iron Wolf. She had earned it in action, and now it carried weight beyond training grounds. Despite her effectiveness, tension simmered within the unit. Some of the men, uncomfortable with a young woman executing deadly precision, whispered doubts. Luck, one muttered under his breath, glaring at her as if trying to discount her achievements, ignored them. Luck had nothing to do with it. Everything she had done had been calculated, deliberate, and born from discipline. The mission's complexity intensified when the team encountered an unexpected ambush near the village's northern edge. A group of enemy combatants had positioned themselves with a clear line of fire toward the SEAL's extraction point. The team froze under the hail of bullets, their cover compromised. His voice crackled through the comms. "Positions. Overwatch, you're up." His heart beat steadily, her mind sharp. This was the moment she had trained for, the moment the Iron Wolf would prove her worth. Crawling into a better position under heavy fire adjusted her scope. She identified enemy positions, calculated distances, wind drift, and timing. One by one, she neutralized the threats with surgical precision, each shot deliberate and measured. The SEALs below used the opening she created to reposition, advance, and secure key positions. The enemy was thrown into chaos, unable to predict the source of their losses. For the first time, those who had doubted her now witnessed her skill firsthand. Even with her success, the operation was not without consequence. The team suffered casualties, a reminder that no precision, no training could completely shield them from the chaos of war. His heart sank at the loss, but her focus never wavered. She stabilized her breathing, continued to guide the SEALs, and ensured every movement minimized further risk. Her leadership in the field, calm, decisive, unyielding, began to solidify her reputation not just as a skilled sniper, but as a soldier who could be trusted under fire. As dawn approached, the final phase of the mission commenced. The team had to extract hostages trapped in the center of the village while enemy snipers still scoured the ridges. Positioned herself carefully, eyes scanning for threats. Her hands, though fatigued, were steady. Each shot she took cleared a path for the SEALs, and each calculated decision saved lives. By the time the hostages were secured and extraction began, 12 men and civilians owed their lives, directly or indirectly, to the Iron Wolf's marksmanship and judgment. Back at the base, finally removed her helmet, sweat and grime streaking her face, her hands still trembling slightly from tension and exertion. Some of the men who had doubted her now approached silently, offering nods of acknowledgement or simple, grudging respect. Stepped forward, his eyes meeting hers. There was no need for words. He had seen her precision, her courage, and the calm under pressure that defined the Iron Wolf. In that moment, understood that she had moved from a candidate proving herself in training to a soldier commanding respect in battle. Yet even as the adrenaline faded and the operation debrief began, was not content. She knew that every action she had taken could have gone differently, that one miscalculation could have cost lives, and that the true test of a SEAL was not surviving one mission, but performing flawlessly under constant, unrelenting pressure. The desert, the enemy, and the endless threats were only the beginning. There would be more battles, more lives depending on her, and more moments where her training, courage, and instincts would be tested to the limit. That night, as she cleaned her rifle and reflected on the day's events, thought of her father. She imagined his voice in her mind, steady and calm. "You've got this. Steady breath, steady aim." The words reminded her that precision was more than a skill, it was a mindset, a way of life. And for the first time, she felt truly ready to live up to the name she had earned in whispers and action alike. Iron Wolf. The mission had earned her recognition, yes, but it also cemented a deeper understanding. Leadership, courage, and skill could never be taken for granted. Respect was hard-won, survival harder. Carter had faced real combat for the first time, and she had excelled. She had earned the trust of her team, silenced doubters, and most importantly, discovered the depths of her own strength. And yet, as she lay in her bunk that night, exhaustion heavy in every muscle, she knew this was only the beginning. Operation Iron Dagger was the first real test of her abilities, and the world beyond the training grounds was far more unpredictable, far more dangerous. But Carter, the Iron Wolf, was ready to face it. She had been forged in fire, shaped by doubt and determination, and now, tested by combat, she had become a force no one would ever underestimate. The return to base after Operation Iron Dagger was tense, though outwardly calm. The team had completed the mission, but the weight of loss lingered like a shadow. A young SEAL had been injured during the extraction, and whispers began circulating among the men about who had faltered and why. Though exhausted from the mission, could sense the undercurrents. Some of her teammates, still uncomfortable with a woman in a position of lethal authority, glanced at her with suspicion. Doubts that had never fully disappeared now resurfaced, murmured behind closed doors. The next mission was even more critical. Intelligence had identified a small enemy outpost believed to harbor high-value targets. The SEALs were to infiltrate, neutralize the threat, and return without alerting the larger forces. Its role was sniper overwatch, a position of trust, precision, and deadly responsibility. The operation began smoothly. Positioned herself atop a ridge overlooking the target area, scanning the terrain for any movement. The desert sun reflected off distant rooftops, creating heat mirages that threatened to mislead even the most experienced sharpshooters. The mission, however, took a sudden turn. Enemy combatants emerged from a previously unidentified trench, forcing the SEALs into unexpected combat. Adjusted quickly, taking calculated shots, neutralizing immediate threats. But then chaos erupted. One of the SEALs in the assault team went down under enemy fire. In the confusion, hesitated just for a heartbeat before taking a critical shot. In that moment of pause, the enemy's suppression fire pinned her team, and a teammate was fatally wounded. The aftermath was immediate and brutal. The team under heavy fire completing the mission but paying a terrible cost. Back at base, the atmosphere was tense, charged with grief and anger. Some blamed the chaos of combat while others whispered that hesitation had cost a life. Rumors spread like wildfire through the barracks. She froze. She didn't act fast enough. Even those who had admired her skills began to doubt. Felt the weight of their stares. The cold edge of suspicion slicing through the camaraderie she had fought so hard to build. Commander Ray called her into the debriefing room, a place where truth and accountability were demanded. Stood silently, shoulders squared, eyes steady. Reviewed the mission footage meticulously, asking pointed questions about her decision-making, timing, and judgment. Every heartbeat seemed. She recounted the events calmly, explaining her observation of a child used as a decoy by the enemy sniper, a critical detail that had caused her split-second delay. The room was silent as the footage was replayed. The truth was undeniable. Had acted with discipline, restraint, and situational awareness that had ultimately prevented further civilian casualties. Her hesitation had not been weakness but a calculated choice in the chaos of battle. Eyes, usually unreadable, softened slightly as he nodded. "You made the right call," he said. "It's a hard decision, but it saved lives. That's what matters." Despite validation, faced a more insidious challenge. The whispers among her peers persisted. Some could not reconcile her skill with their biases, and subtle acts of exclusion and doubt followed her. Team exercises became tense, with a few members questioning her decisions, testing her in small ways to undermine her authority. Felt the weight of isolation, a reminder that even in a brotherhood forged in battle, prejudice could linger. Alone in her quarters that night, reflected on the incident. Doubt gnawed at the edges of her mind, not about her ability, but about trust, acceptance, and whether she could ever truly belong in a world that had once dismissed her before she even set foot in the desert. Her father's dog tags gleamed faintly under the light, and she touched them lightly, whispering, "Pain fades, focus stays." She reminded herself that recognition and respect were earned continuously, not given freely, and that her purpose was not to prove herself to the doubtful, but to live up to the standards she had set for herself. Decided she would act. She requested reassignment to advanced sniper training, a move that surprised her peers. They saw it as an attempt to retreat, a way to avoid scrutiny, but viewed it differently. This was a chance to refine her skill, to prepare for the challenges that real combat demanded. At sniper school, she would be tested under the most extreme conditions, not just physically, but mentally, with exercises that simulated real-life scenarios far beyond anything the General SEAL candidate might face. Sniper school was a world of precision and patience. Days blurred into repetitive drills of observation, target identification, and marksmanship under extreme conditions. Night exercises tested their senses, forcing candidates to operate silently, invisibly, and with unerring accuracy. Threw herself into the work, isolating herself from distractions, building her endurance and sharpening her instincts. She became a ghost on the training field, invisible, calm, and lethal. Through this period, also mentored a younger recruit struggling with the isolation and rigors of sniper school. She recognized in him the same doubts and fear she had felt, and she guided him with quiet patience. In doing so, she learned the true meaning of leadership, not through dominance or confrontation, but through example, mentorship, and unwavering reliability. Her peers began to notice, and grudging respect slowly replaced whispers of doubt. Despite her focus, the memory of the mission loss and the judgment of some teammates lingered. Used it as fuel, pushing herself further, questioning every move, calculating every shot, and analyzing every tactical decision. Her goal was not just perfection, it was mastery. She knew that in the life-and-death world of a SEAL sniper, hesitation could mean failure and failure could mean death. Every mistake she had made was a lesson, every doubt a chance to improve. Months passed and emerged from sniper school transformed. Her precision, situational awareness, and calm under pressure became legendary among instructors. Personally briefed her on a new classified mission, Operation Black Viper, and his tone carried both authority and confidence. "Yours is rare. This mission will test everything: marksmanship, judgment, and courage under fire. I need the Iron Wolf at her best." Nodded, calm but resolute. She had faced blame, prejudice, and personal doubt. Now she would be tested again, and she was ready. The shadows of blame had not defeated her. They had forced her to confront the gap between perception and reality, to refine her instincts, and to strengthen her mental fortitude. Carter was no longer simply proving herself to others. She was proving to herself and to the world that the Iron Wolf could survive, excel, and lead even in the darkest, most unforgiving circumstances. Carter woke before dawn, as she had done countless times before, the darkness of the world outside mirrored by the silence in her mind. She had emerged from sniper school not just skilled, but refined, every muscle, every reflex, every thought honed like the edge of a blade. Yet even now, she refused complacency. The whispers of doubt and the shadows of blame from her previous mission had faded, but the fire they sparked remained. His task was not only to perfect her craft, but to become unshakable in body, mind, and spirit. The barracks were quiet, most of the unit still lost in sleep. Moved silently to the small training yard, carrying only her rifle and the weight of her focus. She set up targets at varying distances, some mere meters away, others over a kilometer, barely visible across the terrain. Every shot she fired was calculated, deliberate, and precise. She imagined enemy movements, civilian obstacles, environmental factors, wind, heat, and humidity. Every day became an experiment in perfection, a test of limits that could never truly be satisfied. Her instructors often visited, observing silently. Though rarely vocal, allowed his gaze to linger longer than usual. Others whispered about her relentless dedication. One trainee, struggling with night shooting exercises, asked how she maintained such calm under extreme pressure. Simply replied, "I listen, I watch, I breathe. The target tells you everything if you're quiet enough to notice." Her philosophy was simple yet profound. Mastery was not brute strength. It was patience, observation, and discipline. The physical regimen was as grueling as the mental one. Ran miles before breakfast, carried weighted packs through rocky terrain, and swam through freezing rivers to simulate extraction and pursuit conditions. Every step was calculated, every motion purposeful. Pain was not an obstacle but a gauge. If her body screamed, she smiled inwardly. It was evidence of growth. Injuries were met with therapy and continued practice, the mind forced to override the instinct to stop. She had learned that endurance wasn't just surviving fatigue. It was anticipating it, controlling it, and using it to sharpen focus. Isolation became her ally. While other trainees socialized, studied maps, enemy tactics, and environmental variables, she memorized every variable that could affect a shot, from shifting desert winds to the sway of a tree branch in mountain forests. She ran simulations in her mind, visualizing complex scenarios, predicting enemy behavior, and rehearsing split-second decisions. In silence, she became a predator of thought, anticipating threats before they even manifested. Her peers began to notice, marveling at her almost supernatural calm and foresight. Yet her preparation extended beyond skill alone, also focused on strategy and leadership. She mentored younger recruits, guiding them through complex drills and teaching them the mental discipline required to survive. Her calm authority inspired confidence, and slowly, grudging respect grew into admiration. For the first time, she realized that leadership was not about being feared or dominant, but about being reliable, composed, and decisive when it mattered most. Sleep deprivation exercises returned to test her limits, was placed in simulated combat scenarios at night, under conditions of extreme fatigue, forced to make life-or-death decisions. Her mind remained razor-sharp. She identified threats, calculated distances, and neutralized targets with consistent precision. Other candidates faltered under the pressure but thrived. The Iron Wolf was no longer just a nickname. It had become an identity, a synthesis of skill, endurance, and mental fortitude. The most critical test came when assigned her a solo exercise. Infiltrate a mock hostile compound under darkness, eliminate high-value targets, and exfiltrate undetected. The conditions were harsh: simulated gunfire, environmental obstacles, and time pressure. Moved silently, blending with shadows, reading the terrain like a living map. One misstep could cost the exercise, but she was flawless. Every shot was deliberate, every movement precise, every breath controlled. When she returned to the extraction point, simply nodded the rarest of approvals. "You've surpassed expectation," he said. "You are ready." Even in these moments of success, mind remained vigilant. She reflected on past missions, the mistakes of hesitation, the shadows of doubt cast by others, and the lives that had depended on her accuracy. She realized that preparation was endless. The battlefield demanded constant improvement, for mastery was a lifelong pursuit. The Iron Wolf was not merely a sharpshooter. She was a thinker, a strategist, a guardian of lives through patience and precision. She also embraced a new understanding. Fear and hesitation were natural, but they could be controlled. The moments of pause in past missions, once criticized, were now studied and internalized as part of her instinct. The balance between decisiveness and caution became her signature. She was not reckless, nor was she hesitant. She was precise, observant, and unflinching. Every heartbeat, every breath, every thought was calibrated to survival and mission success. Outside training still faced subtle prejudice. Some of the men who had once doubted her whispered comparisons, trying to measure her against the best men in the unit. But she no longer reacted to these challenges with defensiveness or anger. She let her results speak. Every successful exercise, every mission rehearsal, and every act of mentorship reinforced her presence. Gradually, the respect she had earned became unshakable, rooted not in gender or expectation, but in undeniable ability. By the end of her intense preparation period had transformed completely. She was faster, stronger, more precise, and mentally resilient beyond any previous limits. Her rifle was an extension of her body, her mind an instrument of calculation and observation, her judgment sharpened through relentless repetition and reflection. The Iron Wolf had fully emerged, a force of skill, calm, and unwavering focus. When briefed the team on the upcoming mission, Operation Black Viper was ready. She understood the stakes: hostages in enemy territory, a hostile village, unpredictable threats, and no margin for error. This mission would test everything she had prepared for: speed, stealth, precision, and mental fortitude, but welcomed it. She no longer needed to prove herself to others. She only needed to be the Iron Wolf she had forged in silence, in sweat, and in fire. That night, as lay in her bunk, she ran through the mission mentally. Every scenario, every potential obstacle, every enemy tactic was analyzed, rehearsed, and anticipated. She was calm, confident, and ready. Her hands rested lightly on her rifle, her eyes reflecting determination. The journey from the girl laughed at in Montana to this moment, a fully realized soldier, was complete. She had been tested in body, mind, and spirit, and now she was prepared to face the crucible of combat once again. The Iron Wolf was ready. The night was silent but for the whisper of the desert wind and the distant hum of military vehicles. Carter lay prone atop a ridge overlooking the enemy compound, her rifle resting lightly on a sandbag, her scope trained on every possible angle. Operation Black Viper was a mission requiring surgical precision, extract hostages, neutralize high-value targets, and maintain stealth at all costs. Her team moved below her, shadows among shadows, relying on her eyes, her calculations, and her instinct to guide them through the chaos. The tension was palpable. Even the seasoned SEALs, veterans of countless missions, moved cautiously, aware of the stakes. The mind was perfectly still, focusing only on what she could control: breathing, wind, angle, and timing. Each heartbeat was measured, each movement deliberate. This was the moment she had trained for years of Montana forests, grueling SEAL training, sniper school, and combat experience, all culminating in a single, decisive test. Suddenly, a flare lit the horizon. Enemy combatants were on the move, alerted to subtle disturbances. His voice crackled over the comms. "Iron Wolf, you're up." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of responsibility. Inhaled deeply, aligning her scope. In that instant, every doubt, every whisper of prejudice from the past, every fear from training or Hell Week faded. She was the Iron Wolf, and now she would prove it. Her first target appeared, a sniper attempting to pin down her team's movement. His finger hovered above the trigger, her eye locked on the crosshairs. The wind shifted slightly, the distance exact. One shot, precise, lethal, and the enemy was neutralized before they could fire. The team moved forward, unscathed, relying on her precision to carve a path through danger. Minutes stretched into tense hours. Training was tested to its absolute limits. Enemy combatants appeared unpredictably, sometimes in pairs, sometimes alone, testing her patience and reflexes. She remained calm, each shot calculated, each movement anticipating the enemy's patterns. Her team called out positions, movements, and potential threats, but the final decision always rested with her. Every time she fired, she measured distance, wind, angle, and timing, ensuring each round achieved maximum effect without risk to her team. Then came the critical moment. Hostages were trapped in a fortified building at the center of the compound. Enemy snipers had a clear line of fire, and every second counted. His voice returned. "Iron Wolf, you're up." Eyes on the target, adjusted her scope, noting the angles and movement. She saw a child among the hostages, shielded by enemy fighters. The situation demanded perfection. Hesitation was fatal. Miscalculation meant death. His hands were steady. She tracked the movements of the enemy sniper, waiting for the perfect moment. Time seemed to stretch, the world reduced to the scope, the target, and the rhythm of her breath. Then, with a calm precision that betrayed no fear, she fired. The enemy sniper fell silently. One by one, she neutralized the threats along the extraction route, clearing a path for the hostages and her team. Her teammates, previously doubtful, now whispered in awe, "She's incredible. Iron Wolf never misses." The nickname, once a murmured legend, became a statement of truth. Focus never wavered. She continued to calculate, anticipate, and execute with surgical precision, guiding her team through the heart of danger. Every shot saved lives, every decision critical, and every movement executed flawlessly. As the mission reached its climax, faced the final challenge, a heavily armed guard positioned at blocking the team's extraction route. His voice was calm but urgent. "Target is critical. You're the only one who can neutralize it." Eyes narrowed. She calculated distance, wind, and angle. She considered the risk, the collateral, and the split-second timing required. Then, with unshakable resolve, she fired. The enemy fell, and the path was clear. Her team moved through, the hostages safe, and the mission nearly complete. The final moments were tense, each second stretching as the team exfiltrated under cover of darkness. provided overwatch, scanning every angle for threats, her rifle ready. She caught a movement, a last enemy fighter attempting to flank the team. Without hesitation, she took the shot. Silence returned, broken only by the distant hum of extraction vehicles. The team had succeeded. The hostages were safe. Lives had been saved, and the mission was a flawless execution under extreme pressure. Back at the extraction point, her teammates gathered around her. Approached, his eyes reflecting approval and a rare hint of pride. "You were flawless," he said. "Steady, precise, and decisive. You've earned every ounce of respect out here." Allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. She had faced doubt, prejudice, and extreme danger and emerged not just unscathed but victorious. The Iron Wolf had proven herself beyond question. Even among the men who had once questioned her, all replaced skepticism. No one spoke of luck or hesitation anymore. Every calculation, every moment of focus, every split-second decision had been deliberate, had earned her place, not just in the SEAL unit, but in the hearts and minds of those who had witnessed her skill. She was no longer the girl laughed at in Montana, nor the candidate doubted during training. She was a warrior, precise, fearless, and unflinchingly reliable. As the team boarded the extraction vehicle, his gaze swept over the desert. The shadows of the night, the danger, and the tension had all been conquered. She knew that future missions would bring new challenges, new threats, and new opportunities to test her limits. But for now, she allowed herself a quiet moment of pride. Every step of her journey, Montana forests, ridicule, Hell Week, sniper school, and previous missions, had led to this moment. She had become the Iron Wolf. That night, as cleaned her rifle in the safety of the base, she reflected on the journey. Each test, each challenge, each doubt had forged her into something greater than she had imagined. The Iron Wolf was no longer a name whispered in disbelief. It was a statement of fact. She had proven that skill, courage, and unwavering focus could overcome any obstacle, and that respect was earned through action, not expectation. Carter, the Iron Wolf sniper, had arrived. The desert sun rose slowly, casting gold across the base as Carter stood quietly, surveying the horizon. The missions, the battles, and the challenges had changed her, shaped her into something far beyond what anyone, even herself, had imagined. The Iron Wolf was no longer a whispered nickname or a title earned in training. It was a living truth. She had faced doubt, endured prejudice, survived Hell Week, navigated her first combat, and executed missions with precision that had saved countless lives. Yet understood that true strength wasn't only measured by victories. It was measured by the legacy left behind, the lives impacted, and the courage inspired in others. Back on base, young recruits would often gather near the training yards, quietly observing her as she moved with calm efficiency, her rifle slung over her shoulder, her gaze sharp but composed. Some whispered tales of her exploits, of missions executed flawlessly, of enemies neutralized with surgical precision, and of a calm that never faltered under the most extreme conditions. They called her the Iron Wolf, and in their eyes she became a symbol of what perseverance, skill, and integrity could achieve. Had never sought recognition. The respect she had earned was never the goal. It was the natural result of discipline, determination, and courage. Yet she realized that by simply embodying these qualities, she had inspired others. New recruits began to emulate her approach: focus before action, patience before panic, and unwavering commitment to the mission and the team. She became not just a sniper or a soldier, but a mentor, a guide, and a beacon of excellence for those who would follow. Commander often observed her quietly, sometimes offering words of encouragement, other times simply watching as she led exercises, trained, or planned missions. "You've changed the way this unit operates," he said one evening during a debrief. "Not just through skill, but through example. Others watch you. They learn from you. That's impact." Listened, not with pride, but with quiet acknowledgement. She had understood from the beginning that her journey was never solitary. Every step of progress she made had ripple effects on those around her. Despite her achievements, remained grounded. The desert, the mountains, the forests, they all reminded her of humility. She remembered the Montana woods of her childhood, the training fields where she had first been doubted, and the countless nights spent in isolation, perfecting every shot and movement. Every lesson, every scar, and every victory reinforced a single truth. Strength without discipline was hollow, and courage without focus was dangerous. She had learned to blend all these qualities seamlessly, becoming more than just a soldier. She had become a force of purpose. Outside the operational sphere, also sought to make a difference in subtler ways. She took time to mentor female recruits entering SEAL training, offering guidance and encouragement to those navigating a path she had once walked alone. She shared stories of doubt, perseverance, and success, helping to break down barriers of prejudice that she had faced early in her career. In her presence, these young recruits discovered not only technical skills, but a model of resilience and confidence that would carry them far beyond the training grounds. The nickname Iron Wolf had begun as a whisper of awe, a legend born of training and small victories. Now it carried deeper significance, a representation of fearlessness, discipline, and unwavering focus in the face of adversity. Enemy forces learned to respect the sniper who could appear like a shadow, strike with precision, and disappear without trace. Fellow SEALs relied on her judgment and instinct as much as they relied on her marksmanship. His presence alone had become a stabilizing force, a guarantee of calculated success in situations where chaos reigned. Yet never allowed the reputation to overshadow humility. Every mission, every exercise, and every success was treated as a lesson, a chance to improve, and a responsibility to those who depended on her. She kept detailed logs of strategies, enemy behavior, environmental conditions, and personal reflections, constantly analyzing her performance to refine her instincts and techniques. This relentless commitment to improvement became a hallmark of her legacy, a reminder that excellence was never final, only pursued. Years passed, and legend grew beyond her immediate unit. Stories of the Iron Wolf were shared in briefings, across divisions, and whispered in training yards, yet remained focused on the tangible, saving lives, guiding her team, and ensuring mission success. The accolades, while appreciated, were secondary to the discipline, focus, and integrity that had carried her from a doubted recruit to one of the most respected snipers in the SEAL community. Her greatest pride, however, came from the people whose lives she had directly influenced. Recruits she had trained, teammates she had guided, and hostages saved in combat all bore witness to the quiet power of precision, calm, and courage. Its influence extended beyond her missions, reaching into the hearts of those who would follow, inspiring a new generation to understand that mastery was not simply skill, but mindset, resilience, and unwavering commitment to purpose. On a quiet evening, returned to the ridge where she had first earned the moniker Iron Wolf. The wind rustled gently through the grasses, carrying memories of missions past, lessons learned, and lives saved. She looked at the horizon, a mixture of gratitude and solemn reflection in her eyes. Every hardship, every challenge, every moment of doubt and triumph had led to this, a life forged in fire, tempered by discipline, and honed into purpose. She thought of the young girl from Montana, laughed at and underestimated, who had dared to dream of strength and courage beyond what others expected. That girl was still inside her, now tempered by years of struggle, victory, and relentless self-improvement. The Iron Wolf was the embodiment of every lesson, every challenge overcome, and every life impacted. She was no longer just a soldier. She was a symbol, a legacy, and a force of inspiration for all who followed. As the sun dipped below the horizon, quietly reflected, the battlefield had tested her body, mind, and spirit. Prejudice had tested her resolve. Failure had tested her courage. Yet through every trial she had risen. She had faced the impossible and emerged stronger, sharper, and more focused. The Iron Wolf was not merely a name. It was the culmination of years of perseverance, discipline, and unwavering purpose. Carter the Iron Wolf had become a legend, not because she had survived, but because she had thrived, led, and inspired. And long after the echoes of her missions faded from the desert winds, her legacy would endure, a testament to what it truly meant to rise above doubt, fear, and adversity. The Iron Wolf's eyes scanned the horizon one last time before she turned back toward the base. Her journey was far from over, for the life of a seal demanded constant vigilance, training, and courage. But in that moment, Carter knew this. She had earned her place, her respect, and her legacy. She had proven that determination, skill, and unwavering focus could conquer even the darkest challenges. And the world at last had witnessed the rise of the Iron Wolf.